the misrecognition of Tigraian life in crossfires. Reportedly, thousands of Tigrayan migrants are stranded in Saudi Arabia and Yemeni territories amid armed conflict and global pandemics. The migrants, who are largely ignored by mainstream media, are facing an atrocity, experiencing starvation, homelessness, abduction, extortion, sickness, and even death. How did it get worse in the middle of a global pandemic? This is Ack-lilu, and I will discuss on this issue in a moment. Stay tuned. Reports of Tigrayan majority Ethiopian migrants stuck in Saudi Arabia is coming out with alarming fear of possible devastating human atrocities. Despite the big hope they envisioned before they set off on a desperate route to the Middle East, these poor migrants had to face a hostile circumstance, making their journey too dangerous. As they crossed the war-ridden Yemeni territory, these migrants traveled days and even weeks bare stomach. However, this is the easiest hurdle of the journey that most find to manage, so long as the road leading to Saudi Arabia is safe and free from smugglers. Unfortunately, as they cross every inch of the road leading to Saudi Arabia, thousands of Tigrayan young migrants have a lot to worry about their journeys, from getting adequate food and shelter to safety and security. Crime is also rife in the route to Saudi Arabia, particularly between the war-torn Yemeni territory and the destination country Saudi Arabia. Criminal gangs operating in the conflict zone in the Yemeni territory use the conflict situation to abduct, smuggle, and abuse the migrants and drain unsubstantiated money by keeping them hostage under punitive handling. Following the abduction, Tigrayans are also blamed of torturing other captives, which is an exact parallel to the blame Tigrayans at home are experiencing under the rule of Abiy Ahmed. The multi-layered attack inflicted on Tigrayans shows that pervasive false claims originated within the current Ethiopian region become common sense truths upon redundant use of the rhetoric. The rhetoric has a dangerous power because it usually goes unquestioned and the false claims are left in darkness unchallenged. The Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia used to have one of the fastest growing economies in the world with 11% average growth for over a decade. However, the growth trend shows a sharp decline following the death of the influential leader Meles Zenawi in 2012. Many political analysts consider this period as a turning point in Ethiopian politics, exhibiting a serious power vacuum in both the federal and national state governments. His successor, Hailemariam Desalegn, emerged incapable of leading the nation and has led the country into a series of chaos, instability, and steady decline of its economic success. Increased public unrest and spontaneous economic decline led the country into abyss. By 2016 through 2018, growing inequality, economic disparity, and repressive system of governance reached at the point of no return, and almost the entire nation lived under abject poverty. Non-official statistics show that more than 40% of the victim immigrants are from Tigray and they constitute the age range of 12 to 30. IOM report shows that many Tigrayan migrants died before they reached the promised land, Saudi Arabia, and many more suffered torture, beating, starvation by criminal gangs. Similarly, it's been reported that over 150,000 migrants, consisting of a big chunk of Tigrayan fortune seekers, crossed the Bab el-Mandeb water stripe for Yemen in their route bound to Saudi Arabia. On May 17, BBC reported that those migrants who succeeded to reach Saudi Arabia have been stranded and several hundred of them have been deported by Saudi authorities for alleged accusation of contracting and spreading coronavirus. UN reports on the surging humanitarian crisis and security risks shows that Tigraian immigrants are experiencing a shockingly concerning threat for their life. Despite the loud cry for help, the Ethiopian government has given them a deaf ear, leaving them desperately helpless. Added to the problem, now there is COVID-19 exacerbating the conditions of their life. During the early outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen Saudi Arabia deporting over 5,000 Ethiopian migrants arbitrarily accused of having coronavirus. And many thousand-folds more immigrants have been stuck in between fires in Yemen, Djibouti, and Somalia. This situation makes them highly susceptible for COVID-19 infection and abuses under brutal hands of organized criminals. Now, we are receiving shocking evidences of the humanitarian crisis in overcrowded shelters in Yemeni territories. Although Ethiopian authorities are aware of the conditions of the migrants, they have shown no willingness to rescue them. Now there is a growing public outcry calling on the Ethiopian federal authorities to use all diplomatic and international leverage to save the life of the stranded citizens. If governments and humanitarian agencies continue to give a deaf ear to the crisis, we will certainly exhibit human atrocities much higher than what we can imagine. Those who are urging the Ethiopian government to act swiftly are certain on one thing. Had the Ethiopian government acted early on and negotiated protection for its citizens, not only could have their suffering got reduced drastically, but the international community, national governments, and transnational agencies could have responded swiftly to rescue these vulnerable people. Had the administration of Abiy Ahmed worked proactively, there could be lesser human atrocities at this time. The point here is not just to hold the Ethiopian government accountable for citizen suffering in a completely lawless territory. The main criticism is that it doesn't see the citizen suffering as a national concern and remained idle from engaging all forces who can work to the rescue of these citizens. Despite their excellent relationships with the governments of Saudi Arabia and Emirati, our government have abandoned these Tigraian lives for contamination. The diplomatic relation which was meant to protect these immigrants only wanted to obscure people's suffering. The main point here is that all massive migrant sufferings in the Middle East is the result of the Ethiopian government disregard to change the life of its own people. Had the administration of the Nobel Peace Prize recipient Prime Minister created an opportunity for them as promised, the immigrants would not have faced the earthly hell they are living with in no man's land. Now there is a severe pandemic on top of everything, and it is posing a serious threat to many Tigrayan lives. If the government is not willing to rescue the citizens' life, let the public find a way. One way to do this is by putting pressure on the international community. Thank you.